One of the big downsides of working for WWE used to be that your character hopes and dreams were in the hands of a lunatic billionaire who could give you the WrestleMania main event or demand your release depending on what side of the bed he woke up on that day. Vince McMahon was a quirky boss, to put it mildly, noted for his many conflicting personality traits. One of them was his sometimes fierce temper, which more than a few WWE stars experienced firsthand when they got back behind the curtain. I'm Adam Pachisi from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 times Vince McMahon berated WWE stars backstage. Join us. But first, just want to say a big cheers to Saley for sponsoring this video. Now, I know what you might be thinking. What is Saley? So, Saley is an eSIM app which enables you to purchase internet data in over 200 destinations, providing a safe and secure connection on your travels, and means that you will avoid ridiculous roaming fees while doing so. Basically, with Saley, you get instantaneous access to a safe and secure internet connection as soon as you arrive at your destination. No more messing about trying to find somewhere to buy a physical SIM card and potentially getting scammed in the process. It's all in the app, which is free to download. On top of that, Saley helps to protect your privacy. Saley security features means that you can browse more confidently, change your virtual locations, block malicious ads, and stay safer with web protection. There is no need to put your digital safety at risk by connecting to dodgy or restricted Wi-Fi networks without compromising on speed, and this is all at an affordable price, so you can save money too. So give it a go and download Saley in the App Store or by scanning the QR code on screen. Use code Cultaholic at checkout to get 15% off your first purchase too. How nice is that? Details in the description box below. Thanks for watching and enjoy the video. Number 10, Kevin Thorne. Kevin Fertig must have thought he had made it when WWE called him up as Mordecai, the all-white anti-Undertaker who was being primed for a program with the Dead Man. Regrettably, his short run as the Pale Rider didn't last long enough for him to get a sniff of Taker, and over the next couple of years he was sent back to developmental, released, and then rehired for the ECW reboot. Re-emerging as the vampiric Kevin Thorne, the idea was for him at some point to have his feud with the Undertaker, but then things got weird. According to Fertig, after he got through an iffy match with James Curtis on the October 9th, 2007 episode of ECW, Vince McMahon was waiting for him backstage and began to yell at him for, among other things, looking too much like Taker. After being dressed down and told to cut his hair and change up his ring gear, Fertig was stunned to be yelled at once again a couple of weeks later for doing exactly as he had been instructed. Sensing the writing on the wall, he booked himself in for much needed hip surgery not long after and was duly wished well in his future endeavors. Number 9, Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch was feeling on top of the world at the end of WrestleMania 35, having just become a double women's champion by beating Charlotte Flair and Ronda Rousey in the first all-female Mania main event. 24 hours later, Becky Two Belts came crashing back down to earth in spectacular fashion after a tongue lashing from Vince McMahon. On the post-WrestleMania Raw, Lynch was involved in an angle where she delivered a promo and got into a scrap with Lacey Evans, which ended with her trapping the Southern Belle in the disarmer. When the man got backstage, she was probably anticipating high fives on a job well done, but was met by her seething boss who scolded her for not falling down when Lacey punched her as he had instructed her to do earlier in the day. According to Becky, writing in her autobiography, Vince laid into her with an expletive-laden rant where he accused her of intentionally no-selling the blow and warned that she had messed the whole segment up. Lynch ended up waiting around for hours after the show in order to apologize to a still agitated McMahon, who immediately softened and reassured Becky that everything was fine. Number 8, Scott Dawson. A short, technically sound tag team specialist who preferred good old-fashioned pro wrestling over sports entertainment hijinks, it's fair to say that Scott Dawson was probably never going to be Vince McMahon's favorite toy. But it wasn't his style or look that did Dawson in as far as his relationship with WWE's Supreme Overlord was concerned. On an episode of his old podcast, the man now known as Dax Harwood told a story about being chewed out by McMahon in the gorilla position after a backstage segment. The Revival were celebrating their victory over the Usos on the May 20th, 2019 edition of Monday Night Raw when they bumped into Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross backstage. Literally bumped into, because Dawson brushed Bliss with his shoulder during the segment. It was something that likely would have just been viewed as Dawson being an obnoxious heel if people even clocked it, but McMahon had a different opinion and was aghast that he had done something so heinous because, and this is me quoting Dawson quoting McMahon here, men don't touch women. Is that right, Vince? Number 7, Batista. Being a top guy and the reigning world heavyweight champion, Batista probably felt like he had more leeway than just about anyone on the roster. That's why, despite WWE's recent switch to a PG rating, the Animal opted to get colour in his cage match with Chris Jericho on the November 3rd, 2008 episode of Raw. Big Dave knew there would be consequences for going against company policy, but he wasn't prepared for just how severe they were when he got backstage. Vince McMahon pulled not only Batista, but Jericho referee Mike Chioda and match producer Dean Malenko into a room where he interrogated them while watching the match back to spot the moment the now former champ had gigged himself. Not only did Batista get a tongue lashing for going into business for himself, but he was also fined a rather steep $100,000. On top of that, Jericho, Chioda and Malenko were also fined $5,000 apiece, despite the fact that the Iceman knew nothing about the plan to draw blood. Batista, to his credit, paid everyone else's fines, though he later admitted that the incident broke his heart and that he knew things would never be the same after Vince's tirade sucked the life out of him. Number 6, Teddy Long. Vince McMahon wasn't just liable to tear strips out of somebody for a perceived mess-up on TV. Just ask Teddy Long, who incurred McMahon's wrath for an innocent, innocuous and barely realised mistake prior to a dark match at a SmackDown taping. As revealed during an appearance on The Undertaker's 6 Feet Under podcast, the Blue Brand's general manager got in hot water for using Randy Orton's nicknames. They were in Orton's hometown of St. Louis, Missouri, with Teddy introducing the local hero as the Viper and the Legend Killer. And you would think that would be fine, right? After all, they were names he'd used for years and is still known by them today. Well, it wasn't fine, at least not in the eyes of McMahon, who was incensed that Long had used the nicknames to hype Orton up because the crowd already knew who he was. Vince told Teddy that he was better than that during the lecture. Long, who it must be noted had been smoking some sweet Mary Jane with Randy on the bus prior to the show, apologised for playing around and promised that nothing like that would happen again, player. Number 5, Mickie James. WrestleMania 22 was a big day not just for Trish Stratus and Mickie James, but for women's wrestling in WWE. Their women's championship match was the culmination of a storyline that had spanned 6 months, and they were going to get some actual time to pay it off on the grandest stage. The match itself was longer and better than your typical WWE women's match from that era, save for 1 or 2 ropey moments, memorable not only for Mickie pinning Trish to bag her first women's title, but also for the moment just before the finish where James grabbed Stratus by the crotch and then made a, gesture toward the hard cam. The new champ thought she had just created a WrestleMania moment that everybody would be thrilled about, but the man in charge was far from happy. As James later recounted, Vince McMahon was furious when she got to the gorilla position. He told her that the gesture was crass, that he didn't like it at all, and that editing it out of future broadcasts would be extra unwanted work for the production team. Mickie's tears of joy quickly turned into ones of sadness. Number 4, Maven. While Mickie James would get another chance to ply her trade at the Showcase of the Immortals, former WWE star and current YouTube sensation Maven would not be so lucky. The Tough Enough Season 1 winner only ever had one Mania match, defending the Hardcore Championship against Goldust at WrestleMania 18. Maven was already a ball of nerves, given that he was still very green to the business and hadn't been helped by The Rock of all people, telling him, "Nobody is expecting much out of you, just do the best you can," about an hour before match time. In truth, nobody was expecting too much out of Maven, but it was still a high-pressure situation and he had to focus on getting everything right. Unfortunately, he whiffed on a trash can dropkick spot, which the bizarre one bumped for anyway. When Maven got backstage, Vince McMahon was waiting to let him know that he had messed up, angrily telling him, "You've got one move. You got one move and you missed it." Nothing quite like kicking a man when he's down, is there? Number 3, Ric Flair. Remember that blistering promo Ric Flair cut on Carlito on the February 5th, 2007 edition of Raw? In it, the Nature Boy scolded Carlito for leaving the show early, saying that he hadn't sweat or bled for his spot, but wanted to fly first class with Tori Wilson, don't we all, mate, even though he had just lost his match earlier in the night. It was an impassioned speech that was inspired by something that had actually happened to Flair earlier in the show. According to Slick Rick, he had just gotten backstage after a clunky match with Intercontinental Champion Jeff Hardy, and Vince McMahon had a few choice words for what he had just seen. Per Flair, McMahon told him that he needed to pull himself together and start leading by example for the younger generation's sake. The Nature Boy was going through something of a crisis of confidence at this time, and his boss knew it. Vince did tell Flair that he would take care of him in the long run, but he needed to get his act together and stop moping around backstage or second-guessing himself in the ring. The dirtiest player in the game used McMahon's words not just for his promo on Carlito later in the show, but as motivation for his final year as a full-time in-ring performer. Number 2, Bray Wyatt. According to his former tag partner Matt Hardy, Bray Wyatt had a complicated and often strange relationship with Vince McMahon. Likening it to being almost father and son, Hardy noted that McMahon would be full of praise and bend over backwards for Wyatt when he did something he liked, but would almost shut him out completely if he did something he didn't. Matt specifically recalled one scene where Vince reamed Bray out after a match because the Eater of Worlds didn't perform his signature spider walk taunt. McMahon asked Wyatt why he hadn't done it, accusing him of not being able to because he wasn't in shape. According to Hardy, a riled-up Vince told Bray, "You're not even playing the gimmick," during his tirade. With insults being hurled at him by the man who signed his checks apparently being a common occurrence, Wyndham Rotunda channeled his frustration when developing the Fiend character, which was evident in the evil McMahon puppet, which McMahon reportedly loved. Number 1, The Undertaker. A loyal soldier for Vince McMahon during his 30-year in-ring WWE career, The Undertaker had a relationship with the boss like nobody else. Though McMahon loved and respected the dead man for all he had done for the company, Mark Calloway was not exempt from being told off. Taker has spoken about how Vince first read him the Riot Act for 45 minutes after he got his first ever tattoo without McMahon's permission, which Vince claimed was going to ruin the mystique of the character. Another time, Vince had a stern word after the Phenom had been a little too rough with an enhancement talent during a squash match. And then there was the time that McMahon pulled Taker, Steve Austin, Kane and Triple H into a room during the Attitude Era and ranted about how things weren't working and changes needed to be made. What were the changes? The Undertaker would drop the world title to Austin on that night's edition of Raw, so a change? Though it boiled down to McMahon wanting a babyface rather than heel champ, Calloway didn't feel like he deserved to be talked down to in front of his peers in the manner he had been. Unfortunately, just the cost of doing business and being friends with one of the weirdest people on the planet.